This conference will now be recorded.
Roll call, Josh.
Sure. Mary Benton.
Here.
Lloyd Colston.
Here.
Brandon Jellings.
Here.
Ian Kuhn.
Here.
Kyle Lewis.
Here.
Cody Richardson.
Here.
And Tom Wheatley.
Here. This time, planning commission members are asked to make a declaration of any conflict of interest or any ex parte or outside communications that might influence their ability to hear all sides on any item on the agenda so they might come to a fair decision. So any members who wish to exclude themselves participating in the agenda items. This time we'll take public comments. Persons who wish to address the planning commission regarding items not on the agenda. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. Any presentation is for the information purpose only. No action. Public comments. Right along. Looks like we have some items on the board of zoning.
A deer.
Actually, sorry. Consent agenda, meeting minutes. Can I get a motion to approve? Second. Meeting minutes from August 9th, 2022 are approved. So on the business, Board of Zoning Appeals is session. We will recess the planning commission, convene the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Recess.
The second?
Yeah, second.
Okay, so we need to elect the chair and the vice chair for 2022.
So we do not actually have designated chair and vice chair because we haven't met since we had all of our changes. And so that's why I wanted this to be the first thing on the agenda today. The way we've done it in the past was the chair and the vice chair of the planning commission simply flip spots. We don't have to do it that way. You don't want to do it that way. It's just a suggestion, but that would mean that Tom would be the chair and that Ian would be the vice chair.
Is there any objection to that or any nominations for the chair and vice chair?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, so this time,
Congratulations.
you are now the chair of the zoning board.
So was there a second to that?
This is second. Mary was the first.
Who said it? Who was the second?
She was first.
So at this time, I'll turn the meeting over to the chair of the zoning board.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Okay, we have a public hearing, consider advisability of granting the variance for lot split, result lot sizes only 3834, 29 square feet at 211, 217 West Jeff. Right here, okay, sounds good, and now we will open up the floor to a public hearing. Again, 3 minutes, and we need a motion for that. All right, so let's go ahead.
Okay.
Have our open public hearing, and you just say that you state your facts and your address.
Okay. I'll go ahead and do.
Oh, summary.
Yep. So this is for 211 and 217, like we said. So Kim Wickham, which I believe is here, has requested a variance to the minimum lot size regulations. The property, as you can see here, it's basically just your standard 50 foot by 132 foot lot. The minimum lot size allowed by zoning is 5,600 square feet. And the lot split that's proposed results in those two numbers that we said in that agenda item. While certainly I have some concerns about making a lot split that creates a lot that small. There are other properties in that neighborhood. I wish it would have, I don't know why it does this. And when I see it, it doesn't, when I make this, it doesn't do such a small map. But you can see on the, I hope you can see on the map. Let's do this. So here's the property here. This property here is an example of one of those. Across the street is an example of one of those. And then over here is another one. We've got like 3 or 4 instances like really close together that do the same thing. So as far as this property is concerned, the houses were both built there. The county says around 1910. That's probably pretty close. They did receive interior remodels in 2018 when the Delbert Morgan estate purchased that property. But I didn't find any other cases on these properties.
The 3 examples that you've given of comparable conditions, were they approved or have they not requested the variance?
As far as I know, those were done far enough in the past that there wasn't.
Their grandfather did.
Basically, that's how I'm looking at it.
So what is the current minimum lot size for municipal regulation?
5,600. I think the math comes out to, on a 132-foot depth lot, the math comes out to like 43 or 47, something like that. It's the minimum width. So that's kind of what 5,600 looks like. So compatibility with the neighborhood, of course, the houses are already there, and we see quite a bit of density from what I said earlier, what we were just talking about. So for that reason, I don't think that the neighborhoods is going to be negatively affected by this lot split. Same thing with public health. House is already there. Certainly not making the house bit torn down. Now, what I would say is if something happens to one of these houses, in order to rebuild on it, you would have to get a variance again. You'd have to get a variance in order, so I'm kind of telling you that too while you're sitting there. So if anything happens, then we can't rebuild. So it's not the greatest situation, but it's already existing. As far as, is there a hardship? Basically, the hardship would be if we do not allow the lot split, it's impossible to sell that other house. That's kind of the way we've looked at this. We've had similar ones before that are related to this. Like Brendan had one, that's not that long ago, where we had a similar case too. So is that a hardship? Yes, I guess. It's not created. The thing is, it wasn't created by the current property owner. Is this in line with the comprehensive plan zoning regulations, just like with any other variance? You of course have to look at that question, but ultimately it's the whole process is in place for this reason. So that you can look at each individual case. If it has extraordinary conditions, then you can kind of weigh that and make your decision based off of that. I kind of flipped through it really fast, but without talking about the pictures. This is going up the street, Jefferson, and you can see the 2 houses there. This is 211, so it's just a little house. They're both about the same size, and this is 217. Basically, the fence line is basically the dividing line between these two. So that's really small. And it's not going to cooperate very well, is it? Basically, this is how it's going to be divided up. This is the property. And this line here is where the split happens. So it's not quite in half because they're trying to find that fence line. And so that's what creates those particular dimensions. As far as staff is concerned, with, of course, the realization that this is going to be a really small lot that's created, based on some of our precedents and the fact that the neighborhood already has precedents that weren't even approved through this sort of process, I think it's probably just fine to grant this variance without too much of an issue. This is, by the way, is looking south along 2nd Street towards the mill.
From the lot safety issue, I'm always concerned about houses that are too close to each other in the first place. And I'm wondering what you're thinking, Josh, is on the two houses that are already too close to each other in the first place, if we do this.
Well, at the end of the day, it's not going to change much. That's the way I kind of look at it, because the houses are, what I'm saying is we're not creating a new problem.
Neither are you solving an old one.
We're not solving an old one either. That's absolutely correct.
That's where there's like a fine, say, change. Should be that much room.
We got a summary. Now we go back to our public input.
Sure. I know most of you guys, and I'm Jason Brewer. This is Kimberly Wickham. To kind of give you an idea of just kind of the history of who's Morgan, who's this person. Delbert and Leland Morgan, Delbert was a developer. He built churches and stuff in Florida and just kind of did everything. Moved back here. Between the two of them, they have 9 kids. Or 10. One.
They had 11.
Yeah.
1 point.
So they sold their stuff. They moved here. Lord knows why. And they just kept buying houses, fix them up, buying houses, fix them up. They got up to, I think, 90, something like that. They wanted to keep them intact in their estate plan. So what they wanted to do was to figure out if any one of their kids would be able to actually do this. Well, Kim and her husband, Randy, it kind of finally fell down to them. So they're the lucky
The
ones.
youngest one had to do it.
They're the lucky ones to receive all 90 and then have to pay the other kids and try to figure that out. So they're the ones that have the fun.
So what's your involvement?
So my involvement has just been their estate plan, been counsel for the family. We lost both Delbert and Leland in 2020, about 6 months or so apart. And so ever since then, Kim and her husband Randy have been trying to put them together, sell some, get the cash flow going. And these two houses where Delbert never met a house he didn't like. At a tax sale, he'd buy them hand over fist, 8 or 10 at a time kind of thing, whether he had the money to fix them up or not. He'd send them screw on them and start working on them. And they had probably 6 or 8 to work on by the time they both passed away.
Are these individual domiciles, like individual family houses?
We're remodeling them. When we got them, they were done with cuts. So we're making one like a 2-bedroom and one.
So they're-
But then to question the end, they are single family dwellings. Each of them are.
They're currently not.
Right. And so the issue that Kim has here is that under the present lot size requirements, they would always have to be under common ownership. You could not have a separate owner for each of those houses.
Yep.
And so what they would like to have the opportunity to do is for help them with cash flow and further development, is have the ability to sell them individually if they wanted to.
That's your intent.
Right.
Okay.
That area there, there's a 2-block radius in the 200 and 300 block of West Jefferson. We're just right up the street here. There are 7 houses that do not meet the minimum lot requirements. And they range anywhere from 2,350 square feet to 5,390 square feet, but there's 7 of them that do not meet the requirements as they're in place now.
They were grandfathered in.
Sure.
For some reason, this one was not.
Somehow, having not researched title, probably what's happened is that they've always been under common
Do
ownership,
they have separate utilities?
Yes.
separately metered and such, yes. One of the things that may have to be done, and I don't know how the sewer lines lay specifically, we might have to put together some kind of an easement to allow adjoining owners to be on the property, us not knowing how the sewer lines are. I know I've had some 18 years ago, we had some in this area that we had a sewer line that lay underneath adjoining properties, underneath the garage, and serviced like 3 houses together. We were blowing out pipes, had sewer blow into a house twice.
Yeah.
So I know there's issues like that out there, so we may have to do easements if this board were to grant this variance.
Okay.
Yep. But we're not changing anything. There's no other development that could happen on those avenues. And just by the sheer fact they're on an avenue, you will never get a conforming lot size. Just because of the depth of the avenue there. It's just not going to happen. Even the one right adjacent to the 501 South First technically is non-conforming, only by a couple hundred feet. But if you look at the ones that are really close together in the 300 block, the 320, 322, and 324 West Jefferson, all of those are between 3,000 and 3,600 square feet. And that's just the way they are. So, you know, as far as the safety concerns you mentioned, and I had one of these for probably 5 years. I think Ms. Benton was on that committee back when we did that one. And that was her concern about fire department being able to go in and service all that stuff. There's going to be different people living in those houses, whether or not they're renting them out or they're owner occupied.
Now, our decision is.
Yeah, I don't see that it would, but I certainly understand moving forward in the future, your concern on that. So that's why we're here. We're open for any questions you might have, and any concerns you have, just feel free to ask.
I kind of have an issue with making these exceptions. I think we should change the requirements or caveats, but in this circumstances, I don't see any issues with it, other than sewer. You know, like you said, if one person backs up, it's going to go on the person's house. So.
And I don't know that they're under the same line. My reason for, I probably shouldn't create confusion there. My reason for mentioning that was about 18 years ago, I had a situation, it was on Adams or Jefferson, how, I think it was on Adams, where the sewer blew up into the house twice. It was not fun. So I know that sometimes happens over in those areas.
If you can verify that or find the remedy for that, that's not the case. I would be okay with it. Brandon's our housing residential expert. What do you think?
I like ideas like this because it allows 2 single families to own 2 single houses. And this is lower, I wouldn't say quality, lower end houses that allows people to get into lower end houses. I encourage home ownership. So I love ideas like this. So as long as they're being remodeled up to code, I guess that's my
They are.
big concern. So.
I share that assessment that we have a housing problem in our city. And this is a potential solution. But I also observe that it's a problem if we do this, because we now have a precedent for every house that is a substandard by lot size. And my question to you, ma'am, is if we don't do this, how much of a hardship is this going to be for you?
Well, my dad, when he was doing these houses, he did it because he would buy, you know, really bad house, really bad. And he would bring them up to a nice house that, I mean, everything's new in there when he was done with it. So it's beautifying the city.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to do. But sometimes you need some cash flow to continue doing that. So occasionally we will have to sell one. And since these are from studs up going to be brand new, we thought these would be two good ones to do that with.
So you're gonna sell these as opposed to renting them?
Well, we're gonna try to do that. That's the plan.
I didn't want to try to disclose too much, but part of the estate plans Morgan's had, trying to equalize the distribution among 9 kids, when they have 90 rentals, they've got to be paying some to the other beneficiaries. So while the Morgans didn't have to pay the beneficiaries, they're just paying their bank note and their bills, they got to pay the bank note and pay the beneficiaries. So that's why it's kind of out of need, folks.
I
That's
think
why
we're
we're here.
win-win situation. The city gains for tax revenue, increase the housing capacity, and the owner has a chance to, divide this according to their needs. So we have any other input from other board members?
Just one question about the fence. We're dividing these into really small lots. One of them's way smaller than the other. How is that fence in between the two, and what are the possibilities of making them equal lots instead of one being 2,800 and 130?
I think that fence is already there, so when we get done, we'll do what we can to make it as even as we can.
I mean, we're trying to follow the current fence, so if the fence is just falling down, or, is it
Oh, yeah.
making one 2,800 versus 3,800 versus making them both 3,000?
But we had a survey done, and I'm not, I don't know all the rules of dividing everything, but it will look good when we're done.
Right.
And we will try to make it as, even as we
Would you
can.
be willing to move that fence?
Yeah, yeah.
I guess here's my thing, is you have one right across the street that is equal to that 2,800 square feet, looks like.
Right.
So I guess we're kind of splitting hairs here. The fence is already there. When you're trying to create revenue, you don't want to build a fence.
Sure.
So if you have a property right to whatever that is, that's going to be about the same size. So I guess I'm not too concerned about splitting the
I hear
difference.
you, but you just hate to split up like this and then tomorrow the fence falls over. You split it this way for no real reason. If it's a fence that's staying and permanent, decent fence, I don't have a problem with it, just seems cheap.
It's chain link,
Right, so it's,
If you look at on maps, you can also see that the big part of we're talking about 2 small properties. The big portion of the west side is to the west of the sidewalk that's running north and south. So it's not particularly a piece of the yard that people use. So if you take that out and look at it, the fence is running right in between those 2 houses. It's pretty equal.
Can you zoom in on that, Josh?
I shall try. I think it's going to be kind of fuzzy. Where did mouse go? Not too fuzzy.
it looks better.
Board members are.
Yeah, I'm guessing he's looking at Google.
Okay. Yeah, that's all. I don't have an issue.
I mean, if you look at the property right there, it's going to be about the same size. Right across the street.
To 207.
Yeah, right, I see it.
Any other discussion on this? I'm glad we have the board members. It's good to see some input along from the.
Y'all have any?
I think we've spoken, and I think you have your packet in front of you there, so we'll just stand on it.
Is there any requirements or caveats that we want to add to this? I mean, my suggestion would be definitely separate utilities, clarify that's separate.
The thing is, these were probably 2 separate, at one time, 2 separate families living in these houses.
Okay.
It's just, they acquired them, and it was under one lot. If they never acquired them together, it probably would have been grandfathered in years ago. But since it was owned, that's what we're fighting against.
I currently pay separate utilities.
Yes.
Okay.
Separate water and sewer on each of them.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's hold our public meeting and we can discuss that. All we're going to do.
A motion to close the public hearing. All right, public.
Keep going. No.
So the public hearings are closed at this point. Can I get a motion to allow?
Roll call vote.
We need a motion first.
I gave a motion. Second, your motion.
A motion to close public hearings.
Yeah, that's right.
So can we get a motion to allow separation of
That's what we do, the roll call vote, close meeting.
Okay.
No, you don't need to do that. You
Okay.
just need to have a
I'm looking at
consensus vote.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve the variance of that split.
Okay, so we need a roll call vote or a motion
I can't take it from him.
to approve.
Because I'm a nobody
He's
anymore.
technically a growth area member and not a part of the board.
I'll make.
So somebody else need to make a motion.
I'll do a second.
Sorry.
A second. So we need a roll call vote. Do you want to do that, Josh?
Yep. Mary Benton,
Yes.
Lloyd Colston,
Yes.
Ian Kuhn,
Yes.
Kyle Lewis,
Yes.
Cody Richardson,
Yes.
and Tom Wheatley.
Yes.
Okay, the motion has been approved. We will recommend these two lots be separated according to sizes that are shown on one lot. Which one is which? The 211, is that the big one? Or
211 is a smaller one.
we'll, recommend that we allow the separation of the two addresses into two lots, make an exception to the minimum lot size of 5,600. Following the parameters listed as 211 being 2,876 square feet, 217 being 3,804 square feet.
So now we just need to adjourn the Board of Zoning Appeals.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn the zoning appeal.
Second.
Board of Zoning Appeals is adjourned. Now we move on to the comprehensive plan.
Yep. Let's scroll down a little bit here. I know we don't do those very often, the Board of Zoning Appeals meetings, so I think I'll handle it really well. As far as how to do this.
You could use a voice vote, always use a roll call vote.
That's in our bylaws to do that for public hearings. That's why we do that. So back in July, we discussed parks and recreation. So it's been a little bit since we last visited this topic. If you remember, you probably try to forget sometimes some of these meetings. That was a really long meeting. And so we didn't finish the parks discussion at that meeting. And so what we really need to do tonight really is finalize that discussion and talk about some goals and actions that we want for parks and recreation, natural resources, and historic resources, all those topics together. Just to give you an idea on the rest of this process, we've been working on this for what, a year and a half now, something like that. And so I'm looking to try to wrap this up. And so what I proposed is that we have 3 more chapters, or whatever. Yeah, 3 more chapters that we kind of need to cover. So I was thinking what I'll do is in October, we'll move on to infrastructure and transportation. In November, we'll talk about community health. And in December, we can talk about plannings. If we can get through all of those topics and at those meetings, then I think we'll be ready for a public hearing, which will finalize that process finally. And I propose that we don't have to make that decision tonight, but I would propose that in January is when we hold that public hearing over the comprehensive plan, and I will have some sort of a summary document similar to what we did for floodplain last month, where I just kind of walk through what we were doing the fact that we changed how we do the goals and actions will be one of those things where we're trying to set measurable goals, make that really clear, and then we'll of course accept public comment on anything. If you were involved, I don't know, was anybody involved with the 2013 plans that's in here? There we would have been. Nobody else? It's hard to get really good input from the public.
What about the flash codes? I haven't heard much about that.
That kind of went by the wayside due to cost.
So did we get any kind of feedback from that at all? Or?
Not a whole lot from the topics beyond. We did some on budgeting. We did some on housing.
So we basically wasted our money on the flash code.
No, we got some, but yes, I don't disagree with you. I think that we didn't get the full use of it. But in order to use it again, we would have to pay again. That work for that.
He's talking about it.
Or you could do all lower cost solution.
Well, you can leave a horse to water, but you can't make it.
The public wants to write, especially on Facebook, but they don't want to give you reasonable, positive ideas to make a difference in this community.
As long as we do our due diligence, it's, make the public aware.
That's what I'm trying to do. One thing for sure, I'll make it very clear, and we are finally going to get a replacement for Andrew next month, which will hopefully help me with that process. But I think we can use channels like, put it out on Facebook. It's already on the website. Well, actually, no, the new chapters are really. But it will be all put on the website, what we've proposed, with all the chapters that we've gone over, with all the drafts that are, with all the goals and actions, all that stuff will be on there prior to the public hearing.
So what is the city's social media? What's our involvement with social media? Do we have any kind of presence on there?
Facebook in particular is probably the strongest one we have. And I couldn't tell you how many followers we have on there, but it's not bad. We have quite a bit of participation on there. City manager right now is kind of maintaining it. Like he'll put up, like there was something out there about the Labor Day trash rates, for example. Right? So the stuff like that gets put out there. That's what the public is used to seeing. I don't betting this would be a big deal.
I don't do social media.
I sometimes wish I didn't.
But I keep hearing a lot about this Ask and Answer. That has a lot of feedback, a lot of participation. Is that tied to the cities?
It's totally separate people and back everybody on as connectors. It is connected at some point as a resident.
Put our mayors and admin staff.
Yes. And sort of Twitter this year has taken better than it has ever before in the city. The police department, using Twitter, fire department increased their use of Twitter, and the business side, the chamber has really taken off with using Twitter, which is not a bad thing because social media can bring people to this town, and as I mentioned on exponential so many times, you want to keep writing, people will come.
So in other words, we're going to have to work on some ways to at least get people, at least somebody to show up to that public hearing. I've actually thought that what I did for the floodplain worked really well, but I can't send individual letters to every resident. That's not feasible, like I did with the floodplain.
I was pleased with it. audience at the public hearing.
Yeah. Other than further.
Well, maybe Ken will be nice enough to let us sort of ask and answer. That might be an alternative. What do you feel like we are doing or doing this one, reaching out to the public? You feel like we've done?
Not really, to be completely honest with you, no.
And I say in defense of what the city's doing, being aware of how social media can work in government, we are doing adequately. I won't say we're doing thorough, but we are doing adequately in reaching out to the public, both in conventional media and in social media. I can send press releases, and I've done press releases to the media time and time again, and sometimes they use them, sometimes they don't. So it's just, what can you catch the media on Happy Day? They'll use them.
Or they need content, when they need content.
These are all low cost alternatives, say the flash road.
Yes.
Or the bail flood, whatever.
And see, there are social media competitive to Flash Road. You can build from them. It's just a matter of,
Well, not free, you know.
even free.
Yeah.
I mean,
There's some free.
Somebody can pay for it.
here's the thing, it's going to be, you're going to get ads in them. If it's not free, somebody's going to pay for ads in it. And then, but even the same risk with social media is right now, we couldn't get the citizens to use Flash Road. And if Twitter is the answer, and we build a Twitter account,
The flash road is expensive. Like, it's all low cost.
right? Well, and beyond that, there are just some people. My wife, for example, will not use Twitter, but she has a Twitter account. Why? Because I made her have a Twitter account.
I feel like we need to do our due diligence.
Yes.
No,
They choose to participate, that's all. We've done our part.
Yes, we have.
What about emails? I know you said that sending flyers is expensive, but
I have a suggestion. We can put stuff on the back of the water bill with the newsletters.
Yes.
And you can also do a bulk, I don't know, do the post office that have postcards, and they're not as expensive as monthly letters. You can just put some main points, make it flashy, and send it out.
Yes.
so at the next meeting, I'd like to see some
Solutions.
Yeah,
some solutions.
Teresa's kind of my guru of
If
that.
we're going to present this in January,
Should have known.
we cannot keep people coming in and saying, oh, I didn't get the memo, I didn't know this was.
I totally agree with you.
So,
We're
at least we have a rebuttal, well, we sent, water bill, sent emails, we did 3 or 4 different things.
Yes.
If you didn't get the memo, then I'm sorry.
I'm sorry you didn't get it, but this happened. Yeah. You need to pay attention more, drink more water.
I'll look into some of those possibilities. We'll get it out there somehow.
And I think as being on the planning commissioner, you need to kind of bite the bullet, maybe have a few long sessions where we go through this line item by line item, take some notes. I know it's tough, but go through a line item by line item and take notes, actually. Final draft that we all.
And you know what, I'm okay with that too. If we want to push this a little bit further out, and like January is the meeting where we just,
Well, we've already pushed it out here.
that's why I'm pushing it and
It's
not.
definitely 21, August of 22 an hour.
January of 2030.
I don't think we should push it out. I mean, what's the consequences of pushing this out? Are we losing grants or funding or what's, is there any kind of repercussions?
No, other than some of the early discussion, there's a very good chance that some of it's getting outdated.
And an example, we have floodplain. That then, when we don't get that thing approved, then we need to revisit the floodplain again in 18 months.
Okay. Yeah. Could you put together a kind of list?
Synopsis.
Yes, oh yeah, that was my intention, was to put together.
This is why
Something
we're doing this. This is why. Don't
Absolutely. Yeah, that was going to be part of that public hearing.
kind of pros and cons.
Yeah. Now, the individual nitty gritty details of it at public hearing, probably not going to happen, or we'll be here till 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
So,
But I think we're going to be honest for it. That's our job is not to put stuff done. So we have to, I don't want to speak for everybody, but we have to come in on a Saturday and work session, so get it done.
Not opposed to that. It's all time free. And as I mentioned to the city council,
Would any of the other board members be opposed to take a Saturday afternoon or something just to hash this thing out? Or are you happy with the current draft?
Weekends. I do a lot of things on the weekends. Schedule a weekend will be tough.
and I'm happy, reasonably happy with the current work that we've done. But as I mentioned to the council, when we talked about property tax, and I used the ICS term for planning for the next operational period. We are planning for the next operational period with this plan. We need to get it right because our legacy is commissioners depend on our success as commissioners. We're not spending any money that isn't allocated for us to already spend. But the future, how are we going to spend our future?
We have some pretty serious issues that
We have a lot of serious.
and it's kind of, and that's why we're here to address these issues. So I don't think we should push the data back. I think we should just get it done.
that's part of why I wanted to have that discussion before you even talk about this chapter, because I wanted to know how you all feel about that.
I thought we did a great job up to this point. I just needed a synopsis. We can talk about it and then
I think it's my opinion that we would get more done with one 4 or 5 hour meeting as opposed to 3 or 4 2-hour meetings. That's just my opinion. I know everybody has different opinions, and schedule demands and needs. Is that something the other board or commissioners would be willing to sacrifice? But that's asking too much. That's fine. That's just what I would suggest.
I would not be opposed to sacrificing a Saturday afternoon, but I'd like to see the synopsis from Josh. And if it's sufficient, I don't see a need.
I agree with that. So yeah, let's look at your synopsis and take it from there.
I can bring that next month. I should be able to put that together. Well, we want to talk about some of these goals though, while we're here for parks.
I put together some, I don't want to, well, I won't say that. So what I did was follow, we don't need to look at that. I followed kind of the same pattern that we've been following with some of the other previous chapters, like housing and economic development. We set up the table like this. The goals are the things in black. Those are pretty much taken directly from the 2013 plan. What's changed is on here is the actions in order to fulfill the goals. And that's kind of what we talked about. And setting those priority goals of short, medium, long. So what I proposed, of course, I'm assuming we all want to continue to make improvements to the parks and the playgrounds that meet the needs of people.
So money is available.
As money is available, yes. And so what I did was try to come up with some of those actions through some of the discussions that we had when we had, remember when Landon came and did his proposal, which has been a while ago, probably about a year ago now. So tried to put some of those things in there and more or less summarize that. The ones at the bottom for the historic one, those are primarily from the historic preservation work.
Well, Landon's proposal involved other entities aside from the city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's nothing specific in there about how that process, like with the Paris Park complex and all that sort of stuff. That I don't have a goal that's specific to that, other than potentially creating a master plan that covers that. I know maybe that's sort of the same thing. But
His proposal was vague, fuzzy. He could put something on paper that would make it a lot easier. I mean, where would we start with that? So I don't think that it's a good idea to roll that in at this point.
yeah, it's not specifically, that's a part of why I didn't put it in. I did put, there is something about the master plan. But what does that look like? It's more like we should potentially look
I
at
was
it.
just trying to focus on stuff that's priority, you know?
But if he wants to present something, allow him to present it. We're not going to stress over something that may or may not happen.
Yes.
If he wants to present something, he can present it.
Yeah,
Otherwise, we'll stay focused on what we have to focus on.
yeah, that's,
Well, and part of that, that's why I said, that's a medium goal anyways. We're not talking about something that may even be put into place before we look at this document again.
The reality is our plan is a plan. And we have no power as commissioners to implement the plan. Our power is to present the plan to the governing body. And it's their job to implement or not. But they want us to have the best plan to present it.
it needs to be clear and concise.
And advice.
What is the Wilson Park master plan? Is that even still a thing? What does that even mean?
The original, there was a master plan that was done for Wilson Park that covered all the different activities. Some of that has come to realization, some of it is not, some of it may never come to realization. Like the train, of course, has been redone. Now we have the Farm and Art Market Pavilion. But what's still up in the air, there's several of it. There's the library was on there.
Yeah.
A community facility of some sort was on there. The splash pad was on there, and housing was on there. So we've kind of looked at some of those different things. The splash pad, I'm sure you all know, just has turned out to be so expensive that it's just not, so far anyways, it's not been a viable thing. This library is kind of the same thing. Where does the money come from to actually build that?
And the project that was proposed was announced in social media and in the media. And you should have read the comments on Facebook that, well, we didn't vote for that.
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering, I mean, we've got that up there, check mark, short-term project. What does that even really mean?
I just said to continue development.
But
out. Maybe the plan needs to be altered.
Yeah. I don't know.
But the fact of the matter is the plan's already there. It was developed,
Right.
money was spent on it. All those
I guess if we go back to like measurable goals, like,
Right.
those doesn't really mean anything. Or develop some plan that is ever changing. And not that I think that's a problem. I think the plan will change, but what are we really going to do about it? I don't know if we are, can we?
A World War II general wisely said once upon a time, no plan encounters survives first encounter with the enemy. But without a plan, you are doomed to fail.
Or as Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan, you probably should fix.
Well, the reason that I even put that in there, and the one for Paris Park, and even that third one in there, is because it's difficult for us right now to say what each individual park needs. So what we really need is to, it's my opinion, is to develop a plan for every park. The bigger parks kind of have their own little thing, but the smaller ones could be more of a smaller scale thing. And we have a board that can do that kind of thing, the beautification board, right? For instance. The fact that they have gone through it. We have. Yeah, that's where a lot of that came from.
And yeah, the reality is we have, from what I'm told, we have too many parks. And some of them are disused, as in not used at all. And so they sit there, and I walked by one twice this year, and that's a nice park. It gets mowed. That's good.
Maybe that land would be better used for a house.
Could it be? But then you have the barrier of, can you get rid of city property for private enterprise?
We kind of discussed that back in the 2013 plan.
Yeah.
In fact, that was a specific goal that was put in there, and it was looked at.
So, you know, maybe we need to come up with like limitation on that. Like, how much should we allocate so much of the parks to, you know, to sell to private developers?
Sometimes we can't. We found, I think it was with Catalpa Park, we can't sell it because
And that's the part.
the way it's been platted. Same thing with Cox Park. We found out if we were to sell that off, we would have to get permission from somebody. I think the details of it. It was going to be a complicated thing to go through. There was another park that's not even really a park up on Highland Drive that we found out that if we stop using it as a park, that it actually gets turned over to a church. I don't know how that happened.
So these are probably like donation
Yeah.
conditions.
Yeah. And so a lot of the parks have those strings attached to them where you can't just simply unload them. We did do that with Brook Park that had the horseshoes and it had a play meeting in it. Now there's a community house setting on it. And there'll be probably be another one in the next few years of the second house. So that one we were able to dissolve and put it to housing, put it to different. And the horseshoe pit, for example, were moved to another park that had room for them to build a horseshoe. That was done by the beautification board. They're the ones that recommended that change happen.
So park goals.
And unfortunately, that's what that means, is that these goals have to be a little more vague than we want.
Well, Parks and Recreation is kind of low. In my opinion. We have water main breaks, housing shortages, a lot of other things, so.
And when you look at the pile of money, and you can use the pile of money, to build a new library, or refurbish Hardship Park, or fix the water and streets, the public is going to be the driving force of who decides to do what with that money.
Yeah, if we can get it to participate.
The
I think we're getting off topic, guys.
the public will participate in the voting box, at least less than half of them.
Well, that kind of leads me to that last goal, that or the last action. Be careful how I say that. And I don't even know how this would work. The problem with parks and the reason that they are a lower priority is because they don't have a dedicated funding stream. Yes, there's a budget for parks, but it's mostly to maintain them.
Right.
We don't have a method of budgeting for improvements to parks. If we do that, we either have to get it through, maybe we have to budget it, but there's not a whole lot of tax money that's going to be able to use for that purpose. So the only other method to get it is either grants or private donations. In the case of Wilson Park, it was what we've done, not totally, but a lot of what we've done was private donations. That the reason that that farm and art market, the pavilion is there is primarily because of Creekstone, which is why it's called the Creekstone Farms Pavilion. So that's, if we don't have a funding source, that's the only other way to get it. And so that's when we would need the public to do what somebody just said. The public would be the ones that's trying to drive the decisions about how that's funded. So I don't know how realistic it is to even have a goal like that, a dedicated funding stream, because I don't know what that would look like. About the only method that I can think of that would work, and of course it's very controversial, is sales tax. And we have a limited ability to do that. And as we'll talk about, when we talk about infrastructure, sales tax is probably better used for that, to fix those issues. So I don't know if you even want to have that stay in there, but it was something that came from the old plan.
I'd keep it in there because it's our plan, give it to the commission to decide what they want to do.
Again, it's vague. We're trying to stay away from vague actions, but unfortunately with this topic,
When it comes to the parks, I don't think it's relative. Importance is a lot lower, so I'll make an exception. Should probably spend a lot of time on parks.
that's generally fine with everybody.
Sounds like a plan.
I was like, well, that's good. That's what we're doing. I mean, that's really all I have to do with that particular topic of improving parks. We got to look at it. We got to study them. And then you got to figure out the pay for them. That's pretty much what it comes down to. Is that, yeah, it's on our radar. We understand that people want parks, obviously. But it's not a super high priority for the city. So the next topic within this chapter is more along the natural resources and flood protection. And actually that first action, it arguably should be in that top section, but the reason it's not is because right now McFarland Pond is basically it's just a borrowed pit left over from when the levee was built. And so in a way, it is kind of a natural resource. Now we have looked at other things, including housing out there. I've had several different people over the past several years that have talked to me about housing. The problem with housing out there, well, there's multiple problems. The biggest one is, well, it's difficult to get homes. So That's what I'm saying.
Take it off.
And we can, I'm fine with that. Because what we've run into so far is the expense. It's very, very expensive together. The road right now isn't even really a road. It's just it allows the farmer access to his fields.
Where is it on that?
So by the bypass, it's just west of the bypass, just east of Spring Hill, between Spring Hill and the bypass. There's a little-
So we need to coordinate with people that are going to put in the truck stop, potentially. They dig the pond, they get the dirt to raise there, they got to raise a lot, right?
Yeah,
So that's what
probably.
I'm saying, if you want to do something like that, then you coordinate with people that already need the dirt. They're going to have the cost no matter what, whether it's trucking fees or whatever. They have to dig the pond, they have to, they have to buy the dirt.
Wasn't that the original deal you had with whoever done
There was the what were you gonna say?
With the bypass, that was the original.
Yeah,
They tried to have it, it didn't work.
I thought too also that when they built the overpass up in the railroad or by the middle school, that they were taking dirt from that to make that area ADA accessible for that pond.
I think that was kind of.
But they didn't do it right.
I mean, it all comes down to access. The pond is,
The bond's there.
it's there. We just got to have a bridge or a way to get to it. Right, so I mean, it's that kind of reminder that you have to come up with a plan to get there.
Or like Brandon said, we get the development.
Right.
Pay for it.
So I'm going to leave it on there as a reminder. When something like that comes up, let us jump on it. But we're not going to go probably that much.
So why don't we change that to the truck stops and develop?
Well, honestly, that's a great way to do some of these things, like I said, with the parks.
That's very
Private
too.
donations to get it work. The problem with that though, still is you still
Well, that
have
goal
maintenance.
is like really been developed for the pond.
Yeah, I mean, so we have access.
So can we change that to encourage private development?
Sure.
Fund?
I can put that on it.
Everyone okay with that?
I don't think it's- when they did the whole train ordeal, they made no rules for access.
Yeah, that's true. The fact that housing that I talked to, we're trying to figure out how to get over there, and I'm like, you can't really cross there, because the railroad is never gonna allow that. Unless you put a bridge over it. And that's not gonna happen. So the only way to get up there is to build a bridge over the canal, which is a long ways back there if you were building housing, for example. So we want to encourage private developers to assist us with developing that area.
I don't think we have the resources.
Not short term anyways.
If we could just get the mayor to play Mega Millions and win.
But she would have to actually win too. For them to work.
All kinds of arguments.
This next one, I think, needs to be changed more to specifically spell out like Exeter. It just says work with Visit Our City to promote the natural resources. Well, what are the natural resources? So that would be my argument, is that
And I say that Visit Our City is, when that was first mentioned, I think Visit Our City has come vastly improved to just promote everything in our city, not just the trees and the grass. It's everything. So
So what if we make it more specific to that?
that is kind of what I'm thinking, is that really needs to be more specific.
Let's do that.
So promote,
Everyone okay with that?
how about
What do you think, Brandon?
So you're going to say, make Visit Our City promote Etzanoa? that we're doing
I
here.
would say work with.
I said work with
the city.
Well, it's almost like I need to make Ian Coon do your job. Right? Because our city's hiring a new CEO. Hopefully they'll be well, they'll do well. But this is something that they should just do. I mean, this is what they get paid to do.
Well, then maybe that should be more like encourage.
Possibly encourage, but I'm not gonna tell you to do your job.
No. And that's not the intent here anyways. We're just saying, hey, we as the city want you to promote that.
So the city,
Because it's not like that.
the taxpayers pay for the Visit Art City.
Head and bed tax.
Yeah, that is one.
I'm sorry.
The head and bed tax. When you stay in a motel, you pay an additional fee. And part of that is rescinded back.
Well, if it's tax oriented, we should.
Visit Art City has Jill Hunter, so Paisley.
Paisley's the one.
Leaving from the chamber.
Okay, so who are we trying to hire? Inspector of the chamber?
Chamber.
Chamber, okay.
As far as I know, Jill is not planning to leave Matrix.
We'll just probably reword that. Encourage.
Yeah,
Vita.
okay, I can wordsmith that a little bit. To be a little more what we want.
We're paying for it, I think we should force it instead of encourage.
Well, we're not paying for the development. That's a separate thing. They're their own entity.
But we are paying.
We're paying for the promotion.
You're not paying for the promotion.
No, I'm saying what we're doing is encouraging Visit Art City to do the promotion.
Yeah, they are.
That's all.
They already do
Yeah.
quite a bit of the promoting for that.
And they help with the tours.
So we accomplished that goal.
There you go.
Do I just take it off? Just hang it off. Let's do that. All that discussion, and that's why we do these discussions. Now, that being said, there's not a whole lot left for that particular topic. Do we even want that topic?
I'll just keep it on there.
Okay.
So we, 10 years, we do this again.
Excuse me, I don't think I'm gonna be on the committee in here.
I will probably still be here. I'll probably be helping with the next rendition of this. Something tells me that's.
If you want to, but I don't see me being alive.
Not very often.
Yes, I am. I'm sure.
What do we got next?
So the next thing on here, basically the reason I'm doing it like this is there's 3 topics in the chapter. And the last one that we haven't talked about is historic preservation.
You mind scrolling down.
Yeah. So we can see the rest of them. And like I said, most of these goals or actions actually came from the Historic Preservation Board. So they had a lot of input on these particular ones. One of the things that was done since this plan was a survey, a resurvey of the downtown district in 2017. And one of the things they noted is that the district boundaries don't totally reflect what the district is today. There's some areas where buildings have been torn down. So it makes sense to remove those properties, but there's also some properties on the fringes that maybe are relevant. That's what came out of that survey. We really haven't done anything in regards to that, mostly because we just don't have support from those property owners. And so don't really want to push that sort of designation on them if they're not interested in it. So that's why nothing has happened with it, but it still stands that there is a policy out there that would kind of look at expanding that. In addition to that, there is some specific things that came out of that. One of them was City Hall. City Hall is not listed on the register. There have been a number of projects recently that were done to City Hall that probably could have taken advantage of some of the grants and tax credits that couldn't be because it's not listed. I don't know that there's been any work done to City Hall that would have been an issue with meeting the standards. It's mostly been remodels and stuff. So one of the things that came out of that was get City Hall listed on there, which the idea also being that if the city is willing to put themselves in that position where they have to.
So what entity would take care of that registration? Who would specifically put us on historic places list?
Well, first of all, basically the city doesn't control what gets put on that register. We have a local register technically that we don't really use. But the control of the register is with the state and with the National Park Service. So what would have to happen is that basically staff would have to initiate that process. We would probably have to bring somebody in to look at the building and help us write a report out for it.
So we should encourage staff to individually list all places.
That's the next step because the initial surveys are already done.
So that's more specific.
Isn't this something maybe the city manager should do?
Staff is.
Yeah, I'm including staff as very generic.
I'm talking about the city manager, manages the city, it's a city property. You know,
Well, so you, as the city manager, would say, hey.
You would have to get approvals, of course.
Delegations, managers delegation.
Should it be more specific, like encourage the city manager?
Staff.
Instead of staff, let's be more specific.
But the city manager is going to delegate.
doesn't matter, I still want to brought before the city manager. He's in charge of the city,
Then we have-
it's a pretty big thing for the city, he should be involved in the city.
I agree. Then we have some accountability.
Technically, it's going to be me that does it.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I was about to say.
But I want to tell you, Josh, to do
We
it.
should encourage the body to list the city
That's what delegation does.
See, the thing about it is though, even just this part, we're not just going to do it. Staff isn't going to just do that. So that's going to happen.
There's all kinds of grants out right now for restoration of small town historic.
Mhm.
Yeah. So.
But you have to be
If
listed.
he's on the list, we can get some of these grants, so. I would say that's pretty important. We're basically losing funding off of procrastination.
Okay. And another topic that kind of came up from that survey was the churches that kind of ring downtown. There's a number of those that definitely would be eligible.
But those are private entities.
And that's kind of, what this says is thematic nomination, which would be more of a group thing. But what we've found so far with some of the initial discussions is it actually might be better if we individually do it. And so let them do it. But we're letting them know, hey, there's benefit to doing that. And we're also recognizing that those buildings are a really important part of our city architecture. If we didn't have those on our skyline,
Well, when I see the churches,
it would be.
they're not falling apart. But when I go downtown and look at historic buildings, they are the ones that are falling apart.
Well, some of those churches would probably argue that they are falling apart, but yes, no, I understand what you're saying. It's not going to be a priority of the city to, well, I shouldn't say that, never mind. that's not really true. Because if we're encouraging them to be listed, then we are encouraging the rehabilitation.
I think there might be an opportunity here if the churches get registered as historic places and get grants for their historic places. And the out-of-town people who have buildings that are deteriorating in downtown see, oh, wait a minute, how come I didn't get a grant? There might be an incentive there for them to get their building listed so that they can make improvements finally to this community.
As soon as you start working on the property, also so who is responsible for listing historic churches?
In that case, the churches would have to give permission for that process. So that's why this one is a little bit different than the other ones. Like in the case, well, even in the case of expanding the district, these people have to give permission.
It's not our responsibility for the churches. I think that's a private entity. We should just focus on. Of course, I'm kind of, going against downtown stuff too as a private entity as well. But maybe we should include churches along with property owners.
Well, those are two different things, so they're listed separately. Because the churches, in order to have a historic district, you have to be contiguous. And the churches aren't contiguous with the historic district. And so that has to be looked at differently. And the reason it says thematic is because you can have a historic district based on a theme, which in that case would be religious uses or churches. And it still can't be a district of churches.
We have to list of what buildings are currently on historic.
That was part of that report, actually. So yeah, there is a listing of all those in the report. And then in addition to all that, the Historic Preservation Board also created a walking tour, or redid the current walking tour of downtown, which has a little bit of history too. But no, the survey itself has listing all the properties that are on the register and what could be registered, what potentially could be, and a few that technically aren't eligible for it too because of changes. So I hope I answered that question. Yes, there is.
Yeah, I think my intent here is just to assign accountability. So go to one person, one entity, one board, say, hey, where are we at on this?
Well, it's like kind of what you did with City Hall. You wanted to assign a specific entity to do it.
So with the church, it's kind of hard.
It's more of an individual thing.
Is the Historic Preservation Board, like, these are things they are working on? Like, they're encouraging their.
They're encouraging it, but they don't have any more authority or any power to do anything beyond encouraging.
Which is, do we have any more as far as the churches go?
It's been low level talks.
Has anybody talked to them?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so it's already done.
Yeah, I was thinking we change it to make sure they understand the perks of it, and beyond that.
Yeah, there's been
They already know that.
less than successful efforts, we'll put it that way. I know Sacred Heart, for instance, just to let you know what's happened, Sacred Heart's been interested in doing it, but actually pushing through is a whole different thing.
So we can't list the historic churches because we have to have their permission.
Correct.
So we need to reword that based on what actually accomplished.
Yeah.
You can say encourage the historic churches to be listed.
I mean,
Yeah, be listed. And then all we have to do is say, hey, you gosh, there's lots of money out there, you should list yourself and then we can check that off the list. That would be easily attained.
Yeah, when it's not the city, we can't force anybody to do anything.
Exactly. Our goal is to check these boxes and stuff. So,
Yeah.
I think that's where we kind of failed on the last one.
We didn't have a good way to check the boxes.
So,
Okay, well, this next one, it's kind of interesting. I've had several different angles that kind of discuss this. It even came up with that report that we did with South Dakota State University students. Talked about highlighting what's already down there. We have talked, the historic board, I should say, has talked about a program where we have markers available or not necessarily available. It's going to have to be something that the property owner has to pay for. But find a way to tell the story of why we even have a historic district. Well, what's the point? If people don't understand why the buildings are even important, why even have a historic district is kind of the argument there. And so that was kind of an educational project. But again, you have to have the property owners on board with it because, well, for one thing, you're putting something on.
I'm seeing a pattern of accountability. Like who is going to create markers?
That's why I haven't been done yet.
What?
That's why I haven't been done yet, because a lot of these, it's about who's responsible for actually making that happen.
But I think that can't be discussed until it's approved. Once it's approved, then we start assigning accountability. Right, I mean, right now, if the public doesn't approve this, nobody decide anyway, so. Right?
Yeah.
January,
This is our recommendations to the commission.
but if this doesn't get approved in January, the people that we may recommend may not even be recommendable when this thing's approved. So that's gonna be a whole nother meeting. Once it's approved, then we need to go back and start assigning accountability to all these different things. That's why I like the city manager. If it doesn't get done, you make one phone call. And then he can figure out who he put in place. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But you go to him, that one guy, and so.
That was my point. At some point, that this.
Well, that's kind of,
It doesn't have to be right now, but at some point.
this is kind of a pattern for this whole chapter. It's not a whole lot that this particular body can recommend. It's really specific because, well, first of all, we don't have to use it.
We can recommend.
You can recommend
Whatever you want. Whatever we think our constituents want, or whatever the board.
What's interesting is these next two items are more in line with what we've been talking about. They're more about encouraging people to do stuff. It's more about like this, encourage property owners to maintain their properties. That's just a message. That's just messaging. But this is kind of an ongoing one because we already work with property owners to find ways to fix up the buildings. We've got several projects right now where we're trying to do that, trying to figure out a way to
Check that wrong.
I think that's gonna be an ever-going one.
That's the only reason I suggest leaving it there is because we want to use staff to help them out however we can. And we're just specifically calling out in that historic downtown area, we're going to put even more effort into.
So maybe that has to change to like long-term goal, just continues.
Make it medium.
Oh, change the priority of it?
Oh, is that your priority? I thought it was a timeline.
No, it's.
Yeah, kind of.
What's your? Can you scroll up?
Yeah, just use the word priority because that's when we're supposed to work on it. Where's my mouse? I don't like having two screens. That drives me crazy. So if you remember in this section,
So that's a long-term priority.
yeah. So I said this, we build on a goal that would be listed, and we'll build actions around a goal that is listed. Some goals may not have specific actions, but, and then I said what each one does. So short-term priority means it can be next 5 years. Medium is, which is probably within this plan document. 5 to 10, it might get into the next plan document before it gets done. And then 10 or more years, that's just, hey, this is a long-term thing. We know it's not going to be fixed overnight. And we're just going to keep focusing on it until we get to a point where we don't need it anymore. So with that being said, having that as a long-term priority may work.
I disagree. Keep it short term. It's already been dilapidated enough and apathy runs deep down there. We're going to build, it's like
That's a good point.
demilitarized zone.
I'm not trying to sway anybody.
Well, I mean, historic district needs a higher priority on this. You can't just default, oh, it's owner's property. Well, they're not going to do anything with it, you can sell it. It's not to revitalize anything or a tourist stop, if you just kick the can down the road. It's not working out, it hasn't worked for decades. Some people do it, some don't. There's other ways to incentivize them, and there are other cities that have done it by doubling property taxes, but those still want to get behind it. It's worked in a couple I've read about. But that's up to the city commission, hard to do an election year in an element. You can make it a priority. Leave it like it is, it's no answer.
Well, priorities like listed in the years, which is kind of, seems a little odd to me. Priorities and timeline, two different things.
How do we put that on paper though?
Well, like priorities, a list, this is first, put out a list of what's the most important to the least important. That's what priority.
And the reality.
But the reality of it is we can't do them all at the same time. And so the idea was that we would look at this list of things in the short term, this list of things in the medium term.
Two different, a priority and a timeline.
And from my chair, I believe that we submit the plan and let the commission decide how they're going to implement it. It's not our job.
But then decide the priority or the timeline.
And how to pay for it.
Yeah, I'm cool with it. Yeah.
That's the most important part, right?
Slough it off.
They got the money, I don't.
Maybe we don't need to have it. All
That's what we were using for the other two chapters we talked about though, for housing and for economic development.
and we'll just give our recommendation. Commissioners decide.
The only other one I have on here is talking about specific upper floor housing. Some of that has actually been accomplished. We have a rural housing incentive district in place. Now, nothing's really been done with it because we haven't had a project that actually went through that process since we developed it, unfortunately. But we have a lot of interest from property owners and potential property owners to do this. So I don't know how much more encouraging we actually need to do. We just need to take some action. I mean,
Need someone educated enough to sit down with these people and walk them through the process.
Yeah.
Because that's the most terrifying thing when you want to develop something like that, is the unknowns, or how deep do I have to get before I get some money? There's just a lot of unknowns. So if you guys are gonna truly, truly educated to sit down with these people, you can probably do something though.
I think we should be more specific along those lines.
Didn't I come up before with a profit building as far as meeting fire code upstairs? That way you can get at them and then everything stalls out, right?
It's usually where it codes.
If you had someone who is aware of all the codes also, that would help. Because these people have questions.
And then, quite frankly, the problem is all that knowledge exists, but you have to go to this person, you gotta go to this person, you gotta go to this person, this person. There's not a single person
All the codes?
not on the codes necessarily, but how, well, sort of on the codes too. I mean, yes, we have a building official that can do that,
That's pretty sharp.
but he's not going to design it for instance. So you're going to have somebody that can answer questions about how that can actually happen, how it can work. And then the other people that I'm talking about is what's going to be allowed, like if you're going to have to change the building, I guess that's still kind of codes. But also somebody that can help them figure out how to finance this project.
Is that the city's responsibility or?
Partially. Because of the economic development part of it, and because a lot of these grants, the city has to be the person that applies for the grant. That's very common. The city has to be the applicant.
Grants out there.
There's some. Definitely there's some. But for some of the grants, like CDBG, that the city has to be in the picture. There's one that right now that we're looking at called the HEAL grant that will help an individual property fix the property up to make it viable. No, the city doesn't directly have to be involved in it, but has to be like a nonprofit or something like that. Just do a webinar today. The property owner cannot apply for that.
And see, that's exactly my point is you need to know someone who knows the things. If you're looking at a building downtown and you think you know right, and you're 80 grand in, and then you say, sorry, you can't do that, then your whole project is stalled out. You're out of money.
The city needs to know what the city's involved in.
They partner with the ability to submit the grant. Yes, so we don't do anything other than say, yes, he owns the building, it's a good idea, and we think.
Basically, we're throwing our support behind it.
Yeah, that's it. It's not- It can be a nonprofit, it can be a private business owner, nonprofits take precedence, but anybody can apply for it.
It's only check out on the paper.
Now, outside of those grants, there are some grants that the city has to be the entity that receives the funds even. Like that housing grant that we're working on right now, the city has to be the entity that receives the funds. And the property owner really doesn't even touch the money with that grant. Now, they don't all work the same, but that's the way it works.
Is there a person or group that knows these things, or is that the problem? There is nobody.
I would like to say that I am that person, but there's a lot of information. And so what we've done, what the city has done traditionally is we have outside entities that assist us with that. We have SCED that we work with extensively, who's doing the housing grant forms. And we also have, we work a lot with Ransom Financial that does some of the same work.
So if I said, hey, Josh, I want to build downtown, what grants are there? Would you be able to?
Yeah, I can get them started. Absolutely. Anything else that we want to focus on that's related to this topic, this chapter? That's a really big question, I know.
What we said in the housing, but I know we kind of discussed the same thing in the housing. kind of saying a lot of the same things.
They overlap in economic development when we did that chapter. All this overlaps in its own little ways. They're distinct topics, but they overlap a lot. The next topic is infrastructure. And obviously that has been a topic that's been a priority even of this group, how to deal with that. And probably, without speaking for the city commission, that's a big priority of theirs too. That's probably the number one, it's just dealing with infrastructure. And that's chapter 6, that's what it's all about. It's just infrastructure. And it's infrastructure and transportation, but only because it's streets. Sometimes you just spell it out.
What's for the next meeting?
That's what my intention was.
Are you gonna have the master water plan done? So you can look at the street?
That plan's actually done. And that was kind of my intention, was to maybe present that at that meeting.
Email.
I'll see what,
Public information.
I think so. It's been presented to the city commission.
I would like to see it.
Make sure
Email it to them.
Yeah, we can draw it.
miles of water pipe. You can know where we're at.
Is it 40 or 60?
The number of miles before your trip, I don't remember what that is. But it's actually a really good document. I've seen it. There's, I don't know how to implement it, just like any other thing. But I thought they did a good job. Just my opinion.
What we draw?
Meeting adjourned. Thank you. I think we had some good discussions.
Yeah.